Good afternoon and welcome to the inaugural Georgia Bio MedTech and Digital Health Summit. My name is Shay Foley, General Manager of Alcon Johns Creek and Chairman of Georgia Bio. The COVID-19 pandemic may have upended our industry, but its innovations are needed now more than ever. This morning's programming provides the opportunity to explore common mistakes made in startups, when funding businesses, and a lively discussion on how digital technologies and artificial intelligence are changing healthcare. This afternoon, we host our final concurrent sessions, where one panel will dive into conversations on various sources of funding for startups, and the other will take a forward-looking perspective and debate the future of medtech and how COVID-19 has accelerated the digitization and journey to the cloud for the world's health systems. The challenges and opportunities in medical device innovation are unmeasured, but today's forum provides the opportunity to discuss new strategies for medical device and digital health innovators to converge with partners and ultimately deliver better outcomes for patients. Moments from now, we will hear an informative keynote from Mr. Naveed, BD, one of the largest global medtech companies that has played a critical role in responding to the pandemic. And I look forward to learning about that response and hearing his thoughts on how the future of the industry is evolving. Finally, I would like to thank today's event sponsors, speakers, the planning committee, and the team at Georgia Bio for pulling together another successful event. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Georgia Bio's President and CEO, Maria Thacker, to kick off our keynote session. Thank you.
Thank you, Shay, and it's always good to have you with us today, and very excited about today's program. I hope those that joined us this morning for the morning sessions have taken away some valuable lessons learned and will use them in their businesses. This is an exciting inaugural event for us, and we do still look forward to seeing you at our Bioinnovation Summit later this fall and our Patient Advocacy Summit in late summer. So today I'm very excited to introduce our keynote speaker, who is with BD. Our platinum sponsor for today's event. Syed Naveed is the worldwide VP for R&D at BD for the Urology and Critical Care Unit. He joined BD back in 2018 and has over 20 years of experience in the medical device industry and leading different functions from R&D to strategic innovation up through manufacturing and operations. Prior to joining BD, he was head of strategic innovation group at Boston Scientific, and he comes to us from his educational background is at the University of Texas and Harvard University. So Syed, we're really excited to have you here today with us, and I'm going to turn it over to you, and I know we need to give you a moment to get those slides up and running. So Syed, thanks again.
Thank you, Maria. Yes, let me share my screen here real quick.
I'll confirm when we can see it. And it is up.
And I'm doing the slideshow. Oh,
yep, you're good to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Maria. Thank you very much for that introduction. Hello, everyone. I am Syed Naveed, Vice President of R&D for BD's Urology and Critical Care business, which is headquartered here in Covington, outside of Atlanta, Georgia. I'm pleased to join you virtually today for this Georgia Bio MedTech and Digital Health Summit. Before I get started, I want to give a quick overview of BD, the company. BD, as Shay pointed out earlier, is one of the leading global medtech companies, which is uniquely positioned to improve the patient care across the entire spectrum, if you will, from diagnosis, medication management, all the way to critical care and med devices. BD was founded in 1897, and we have a legacy of impact on healthcare over the centuries. It is in over 190 countries. We employ about 70,000 associates and almost investing $1 billion in innovation and R&D. Urology and critical care, the UCC business that I am part of, is also in the forefront, if you will, of providing healthcare and devices for that help the healthcare professionals. Our broad portfolio of devices that we make in UCC covers critical care, which is in the hospitals, endourology and surgical urology for kidney stones and other associated diseases, targeted temperature management, as well as home care. That's UCC. But as you see on the slide here, this is a busy slide, but I just wanted to highlight how BD's technologies support virtually every aspect of COVID-19 response, from diagnostic tools to rapidly identify the infection, devices, essential medical devices that help with the treatment in, say, medication delivery, vaccine delivery. Plus also, if you look at the bottom there, there's a lot of informatics, data analytics, tools that we provide that help in the pandemic analysis and the real-time tracking the pandemic developments. So that BD, as you see, is across the entire spectrum of healthcare here. One more thing I would like to highlight is BD provides a full complement of testing solutions. If you remember last year, as the pandemic broke out, there was an sudden increased demand of rapid testing. And we saw that the supply was, there was shortage of supplies. And so BD worked with our industry partners, with FDA, with the government agencies to help address that need and overcome the shortages. One of the things that we did was also develop a Veritor Plus system, the one you see on the left here on the screen, which is basically a point of care testing based on a Veritor platform. This provides lab quality results at the point of care in virtually less than 15 minutes. This was an important innovation that kind of helped us in our, if you will, our effort against the COVID-19. Also, this Veritor platform interfaces with our BD informatics platform, which is called Synapses, and it helps us to upload the data into EMR, the electronic medical records. So again, this testing and uploading into the EMR, the data analytics, provides the physicians with making decisions and having those interventions that are crucial for this patient management and the response to COVID-19. We talked about the BD Veritor earlier. This was the rapid testing system that was developed based on the rapid antigen test. There was an urgent need to come up with this solution. And once we had this solution, we worked closely with the government to deploy these technologies, this diagnostic tool, if you will, for large-scale testing across the country in chiefly in the nursing homes as well as the long-term care facilities. That was a successful campaign that was necessary to help address the COVID pandemic. And now, almost a year later, we are working with the governments again as we are reopening the schools to address this question of testing and safe reopening of schools and businesses. Besides the testing and the diagnostic tools, BD makes quite a few different products and services. One of the things that is important to note is BD products historically has been used, if you will, on 90% of US hospital patients. We are one of the top strategic suppliers, and our technologies and devices have been historically been used in the front lines in these crises, not just the COVID, but also in the past pandemics and other crises. So if you look at the, besides testing, the other equipment that was developed and that have been used in COVID patient care, starting with the information on the left, medication management, safe delivery of medication management with using our infusion pumps that are used for delivery of IV medications in the ICU, as well as drug delivery with PICs and catheters and other needle-free connectors. needles and syringes. We are one of the world's largest manufacturers of needles and syringes, right? As well as prefillable devices. The image on the right is from the ICU and some of the devices that we have used there, not just in COVID, but also historically in other cases, Foley catheters, urine output systems, and TTM that have been deployed, especially in COVID-19. So I'd like to talk about two examples here that are quite pertinent as to illustrate the impact that some of the BD technologies have had on COVID-19. The image on the left is the Sensica urine output system. This was launched recently earlier this year by BD, by UCC. It's basically an automated urine meter system that is used for continuous monitoring of urine output in the patients in the ICU. Let me give you some background on why this is important and why this is what we call transformational, right? If you go into an ICU, there are 5 or 6 parameters that they regularly monitor. There's blood pressure, heart rate, temperature, oxygen, respiratory rate, 5. And the 6th one is urine output. These 5 vital signs are fully automated. They go into the EMR through those monitors that you see in the ICU. Urine output was the only thing that for the last several years and decades was a manual process where the nurse walks into the ICU, manually writes down the urine output on the hour, every hour, and then collects the data for the day. And the nephrologist or the intensivist, the physician comes in, looks at the data after 24 hours, and then intervenes in either different medication or so on and so forth. But by that time, the 24-hour lag, a lot of things would have happened, and there could be, there's a risk of injury to the kidney and etc. So what this device does is it monitors the urine output regularly on the hour, every hour, and displays it here like this as shown on the screen, but also puts it in the EMR. So now the patients, the healthcare providers have access to real-time data that they can see if there's a drop in the urine output, as you can see in the bar graph there, that we can now go in and intervene and change the medication. This was really transformational. And we saw this at some of the leading hospitals in the country where the nurses and the physicians, they loved this, that they could be able to go and intervene earlier, much more sooner, because they have the analytics, they have the data now. There's a way to measure urine, and there's a way to display that as well. That can prevent potential kidney injury and so on and so forth. So again, a remarkable device that has been in the forefront of COVID response. And one of the hospitals that I personally visited was Mayo Clinic in Rochester, where it was in a COVID ICU case. All the COVID patients had this device, and they could now intervene much sooner than later. The other device on the right that you see is the Arctic Sun Targeted Temperature Management, or TTM. That has been there for the last 10 years. And we recently revised the if you will, the device and redesigned it and launched it last year. It's primarily indicated for monitoring and controlling patient temperature in the ICU. And what we found was that it has been used in the ICU for, like I said, for last decade or so. But in COVID-19, we saw an increased utilization of this on the COVID patients. There's a study out there many studies out there in which people have shown that by using TTM, they have actually improved the response rate of the COVID patient, plus also helped in rapid recovery to the point of complete recovery of the patient, but with the TTM, increased oxygenation and so on and so forth. This was another transformational response that we saw application of our technologies. Another change that we are seeing is healthcare is evolving, right? We're seeing the shift to alternate sites of care, bringing the care closer to the patient, away from the hospital, to, say, the long-term care facility, to the nursing homes, but also to the homes. And BD's business, one of our BD businesses in UCC itself, is home care. And we have a portfolio of products that addresses that need. And we saw an increased utilization of that in the last year, especially with this one, the PureWick female external catheter, which was another incredible innovation, which helps severe incontinent women to have a better quality of life at home as well. So again, healthcare is evolving. BD is providing quite a few products and devices. We also saw telemedicine, right? An increased utilization of telemedicine instead of in-office visits. So that is going to continue. We believe that that's one of the other trends that has kind of evolved by virtue of this pandemic, with the increased utilization of telemedicine. And I talked about data analytics earlier, the fact that BD has some diagnostic tools that are, or not diagnostic, I should say, data analytics tools that are providing a near real-time insights. One of which, there are a couple of these tools here that you will see, MedMind Analytics and Hospital Capacity Planning. So BD is partnering with these lot of public health agencies, including CDC, where we are providing these near real-time insights into the surveillance and reporting of pathogens, including COVID-19, monitor hospital utilization, as well as identify other healthcare trends. We have a database, if you will, from about 300 plus US hospitals where we get real-time data that MedMind is working, BD's MedMind tool is compiling a lot of analytics, and it's working with research partners to analyze the data and suggest potential interventions. These dynamic healthcare databases are updated in real time and can then help provide that visibility across not just the national, but also specific regional trends, and so that the agencies can act on in real time. Again, this is really an important tool that BD has been deploying across many years, but more so in COVID-19, it has become a chief tool. Lastly, I'd like to highlight a little bit about a vaccination campaign. I mentioned earlier that BD is one of the largest manufacturer of needles and syringes, and the demand in the last year plus has been exponential, if you will, for these vaccination campaigns around the world, right? So BD is wrapping up production. We are ensuring there's supply chain continuity, and also working with the governments across the world and the agencies to ensure that we can support these COVID-19 vaccination campaigns. There are commitments for over 1.7 billion needles. That's a billion with a B, and that we are actually working year to date to fulfill and then ensure that we can support these COVID-19 vaccinations. So lastly, I just want to say, given all the work that, great work that the world has done in the fight against COVID, the fight is far from over, right? It isn't quite over yet. Especially we see the resurgence in India, the pandemic coming back with a second wave, a third wave, and the devastation that's causing over there. BD is committed to and continuing to do everything we can to contain that and help address the pandemic around the world. So all of us collectively, citizens, everyone alike, can't let our guard down now. And we must do everything we can to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And we can also learn from this pandemic 19 and say, here are the lessons that we have learned, and take advantage of these opportunities to help develop and improve the healthcare system. I'd like to end by saying BD is committed to advancing the world of health, and also committed to continuing the support the pandemic response that around the world. Okay, so thank you very much for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Syed. Really, really important work that BD is doing in response to COVID and around the world to help ensure safety and the best care possible for patients. It's been really interesting hearing about the company's response globally to BD, and how overwhelming this must have been for the company, just like it has been for the industry as a whole. So I know you touched on this a bit, especially within BD, but I didn't know if even outside of BD you've seen, apologies, my daughter's outside the door. What are some areas of innovation in patient care that you saw as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah. So I touched upon a couple of things, especially the innovation that we saw with TTM, right? That to me was an important one. The fact that we could have a device that was, so the example is very interesting, but in one of the studies in Korea, we saw a woman, 58-year-old woman who was COVID positive in severe acute respiratory distress syndrome, and with the oxygen levels falling. This was a patient in the ICU. The physicians were trying everything else with this. There was a cytokine storm that was causing all of this. And the fact that they were able to deploy the therapeutic TTM, this device basically that cools the patients, and the patient was almost at 41 degrees Celsius, cooling it down to normothermia, which is about 37, basically helped improve the oxygenation levels for the patient and rapid recovery. It's not just recovery, but rapid recovery. And 3 weeks later, the patient was completely free. It was completely recovered. That's what the papers have been, in fact, it's a published paper in one of the journals in Korea. That to us was where we felt, wow, this is where the transformational power of and the impact that some of these technologies are having on the patient care and real people and real impact. I think that was one example. I give you the example of the Mayo Clinic, where this patient with the ICU, COVID patients in the COVID ICU ward, using sensitive output system, helping the patients, that was one thing. But also imagine this, if you had a nurse walking into the ICU every hour on the hour with the PPE and just to write down what the urine output is, that is exposing potentially a lot of risks to the nurse. And now with this device, what they were very happy about was the fact that they don't have to get in there, then they can see the display either on the screen or in the EMR, which again eliminates the need for PPE or for exposure potential risk there. So those are some of the responses and the innovations that we felt were like really touching and that immediate response to the pandemic.
No, that's great. And, hopefully this will also have other indications for other disease states too, for patients too, and to help support the system's efficiencies, of course. So were there any surprising challenges you saw during the pandemic that you are learning from and things like that?
Yeah. So clearly there were quite a few surprises, right? The pandemic itself was a surprise. The fact that one main surprising thing that we all learned, and all of us globally learned, was this challenge of shortage of swabs. We saw that there was not enough swabs to meet the demand for COVID testing. This was because FDA initially had a very narrow list of approved swabs. And so that caused that whole rush towards like, how can we meet the demand? And BD, working with our industry partners, with FDA, kind of showed that the other swabs are equally, if you will, effective and reliable, could be used reliably for COVID-19 testing. And so they expanded the list of swabs that could be used, as simple as a swab. That could that was a surprise. Like, how can a healthcare system as advanced as, if you will, as the United States, be held hostage by what we call a simple swab, right? So that was a surprise, but the industry, BD included, working with partners, overcame the challenge. That was a big surprise. Internally, if you will, across in BD itself, the surprise was there was an increased demand in the devices and the supplies that we need to address the pandemic, which means the production has to ramp up. And in spite of the lockdown, we had to have our production facilities, our supply chain, everything needs to continue to work. And we had our essential workers that were operational, the facilities were running, while minimizing the risk to their lives and contracting the virus, right? So we had many safety protocols, temperature monitoring, the usual different safety protocols. But the good thing there is that we were able to overcome that by working on these safety protocols and ensuring that the employees, the associates were safe, and still the plants were operational. That was a big surprise and a big risk, but one that we overcame, and operations team, even to this day, feels grateful that we were able to do it. Yeah.
No, that's great. And I assume you also had to staff up at a lot of your sites too in order to respond to all this. And I think we all know that the supply chain challenges, which frankly continue to be a challenge for a lot of us, are, you know,
yep.
They're ongoing challenges I think we're all experiencing and learning from, hopefully. So what are some areas of research you have seen as a result of the pandemic, and is BD supporting that in any way, partnering? You know, if you could just touch on some, you know, new growth areas that maybe y'all had not originally planned on, and as a result, and now you're doing research, and that'd be great.
Yeah. So in terms of new research, I think BD is an innovation engine, right? We are looking at new adjacencies, new products, new therapies. We have been continuing to do so, but COVID-19 has kind of helped us accelerate that and acted as a catalyst with an incentive to come up with new technologies and new therapies, if you will, to help and impact the patient care. Data analytics is clearly a one that comes to mind, where there is a lot of predictive analytics. And we saw that being, so I talked about MedMind, right? The MedMind analytics tools and a few other tools that BD has that is based on these databases from 300 plus hospitals. Researchers have using some of our tools have come up with this predictive analytics tools that can now say, here, based on the age of a patient, based on the minimum oxygen saturation, and the patient interaction, that tool can predict the probability of the patient likely to survive or not survive. That was an eye-opener as well. This was Mount Sinai, who researchers at Mount Sinai working with these tools have been able to develop those models. So I think clearly that's an area of innovation that I think is going to much needed, as well as going to grow.
No, that's really interesting and a little scary too, but really interesting that we have that data and that modeling's been done. And I want to remind the audience to please submit any questions and we'll do our best to get to them today. So looking ahead, what kind of long-term impacts will COVID-19 have on healthcare, do you think, specifically in the medtech industry or just more broadly in healthcare, maybe even within the hospital systems?
Yeah, so obviously we have made a lot of good progress in the COVID pandemic, against the COVID pandemic, right? But there's still, like I said earlier, there's still a lot of work to be done. And the impact, besides the hybrid working, the remote working in the industry, if you were to talk about specifically on the healthcare side, elective procedures and routine healthcare, right? That seems to be one that has been impacted quite a bit. When the pandemic first started, we were all like, yeah, this is going to impact the elective surgeries. But what we saw was the drop in those elective surgeries and the routine healthcare was much, much more than what people had anticipated. For example, people were delaying necessary care, like cancer screenings were down by 94%. ER, emergency room visits dropped by almost 40%. And then there was data that showed that heart attacks and strokes, treatment for those decreased by almost 40%. So this is necessary, maybe some routine healthcare that was delayed and that was not being addressed. And that even a year later, we're seeing some patients are not returning back to that routine care, to seek that care. That is a challenge I think we need to address, and this will have an impact on the long term on the healthcare industry as well as on the economy, if you will. And we need to do better to address those concerns. And one way to do that is to have a proactive outreach to patients. And telemedicine is great, but there are some procedures that we need in care, in office visits, and so on and so forth. And we need to take steps to ensure that patients are comfortable coming in and returning for treatment. I think that's a big challenge that I believe could have an impact long term.
Yes, no, we have a patient advocacy alliance, a roundtable that we meet a few times a year. Actually, our next meeting's in a few weeks, and if anyone wants to join us, please do. But that's definitely come up. I think we'll have a few speakers and a couple patient groups speaking, but we have 50 plus patient groups in the Georgia community that participate, and that is top of mind for people. How do we improve access to care? I think that continues to be an issue, but it's more so an issue now, especially as we see rural hospitals closing more. Yeah. And then just educating and communicating in an effective way about the importance of some of these being in-person visits versus virtual. And then of course there's the access of even the availability of virtual in some communities. So there's a lot to overcome, and unfortunately, I think it's going to take time and continuing to collaborate with patient groups and other partners and government in order to really affect change there. So yeah, I think that's going to be a long-term impact for sure. And hopefully new innovations will come out to help improve some of those access. Yeah, with our partners in the digital space in particular. So
yeah, that's where digital health can play a big part in that.
Yeah, digital health, our communications, our like high-speed internet partners there in the tech side too. So so on a more positive note, what opportunities and challenges face the med tech industry going forward, which you kind of already touched on, but maybe if you lean into the opportunities a bit more, that'd be really great if you could touch on that some. Yeah,
I think so. Let me start by highlighting some of the challenges that we faced and how those could be if you will, geared up as opportunities, right? One of it, so BD does not just manufacture devices, right? We also work very closely with the hospitals, with the healthcare providers to ensure they have the right tools, they have the right support and the information to utilize those technologies. And so there's a lot of partnerships that happen wherein our associates are with the hospitals and working with the physicians and the healthcare providers. But when the pandemic started, I think many hospitals actually placed restrictions on who could enter the hospitals, and that became difficult. One of the reasons why it became difficult for us was that to provide that support. And by virtue of that, what we did was BD, we partnered with others in the med device industry, with hospital chains, with healthcare organizations, and said, okay, is there a set of best practices that we can develop, guidelines that we could potentially utilize for to help facilitate that support? The shift to online platforms was another feature, another innovation that happened as a result of that challenge. The fact that we don't necessarily have to be there 100% there in person, but also what can be provided online. So between those two things, getting a set of guidance and best practices to help in-person visits, as well as shifting some of that support to online and deploying these online tools was the opportunity, I think, that helped, but I think there's still a long runway there to develop best practices, to develop these tools, and shifting some of it to that platforms when possible. I think that definitely that's one of the opportunities. Infection prevention itself is a big, right? That's the other one that I like to highlight, that BD has been pretty vocal and in the forefront, if you will, to reduce this, what we call hospital-acquired infections. That always has been a challenge, but COVID-19 infection, that has actually taken it to a different level altogether. Yeah. How do we address that with different technologies? I think reducing the risk of infection is a big challenge and a big opportunity, if you will. Challenge, opportunity, well, we can take it either way, but it's a big opportunity that we should be looking at as well.
No, definitely. I think, with these opportunities comes I would say, new challenges in the sense that we're going to also see the FDA continue to tighten up digital health oversights and privacy issues continue. So I think it's an evolving opportunity and challenge all at the same time. So for innovations and for everyone, and I do think continuing to partner and collaborate and keep those open line of communications between companies is going to be really helpful too.
Absolutely.
So I think still no questions, Christina. Just want to make sure that I'm not missing anybody from the audience.
Nope, you're good.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I wanted to just close with one last question on what areas of medtech do you expect to see most changed in 2021 and 2022? What do you say? Outside of BD, but just in general, I mean, you've touched on digital health, but is there anything else you wanted to add?
Definitely digital health is going to be really important, telemedicine, digital health, but also an element of machine learning. I think where now, when I say machine learning, it's not just algorithms, right? That's still digital health. But when we talk about these devices, like even BD is an example, but it applies to so many other things. When you walk into an ICU, you see a lot of these devices and equipment that are disparate, right? Even in the ICU, there are like 10 or 15 devices, they're all talking to the EMR. Is there a way we can connect these devices? So this connected devices and interoperability, I think, is one that will bring in a big transformation and an important transformation, if you will, in healthcare industry. Excuse me, this is downtown Atlanta.
No, you're fine. It's not as loud on our end as you think it is. You know, and it'll be interesting, I think, as that data gets more collected, can the health systems keep up with it too? So that's a whole other complexity that also pulls in politics on top of it. So
politics, as well as the security of the data, right? You alluded to that earlier. How do we ensure that the data is protected? And that is another area for potential improvement. Yeah.
Well, and I am hopeful in that, you know, we see new partners investing in partnering more effectively now on the tech side that may be able to help with that with our biotech and medtech partners. So that should be interesting too. Well, this has been really interesting and really eye-opening as we continue to navigate this pandemic, which despite doors opening stateside in many respects and people out in traffic getting busier here, it's still very much a day-to-day reality and, you know, devastating communities around the world. You know, I just want to thank you for your time today and see if you had any last comments before we wrap this up.
Let's say thank you very much, Maria. Thank you to you, and thank you to Georgia Bio for this opportunity and to sharing some thoughts here. And yeah, we'll look forward to working with you and the rest of the industry in Georgia and worldwide to address this pandemic.
Great. Well, we're here to help make sure you have access into our community here locally and across the region. So don't hesitate to connect with us. As we close up, I do want to thank all of our sponsors, BD. Thank you, Syed and the company here at BD and the ever-growing site out in Covington and around the state. Also our gold sponsors, Avantor and GCMI, our bronze sponsor, Quality Systems, the consultancy, and our partner, Southeast Life Sciences and AdvaMed. Do keep in mind the upcoming bio convention is just a few weeks away, and also AdvaMed is plan an in-person event later in early fall. And then as a Southeast Life Science will be in Charleston next year. So thank you again to our partners and our sponsors. And as we all move into a holiday weekend, which I know will include fun, I do hope that you'll join us as we remember and honor those heroes who have made the ultimate sacrifice. So with that, I wish safe travels to people. Thank you again to Syed. I know we have one more round of current sessions after this, starting at 1 o'clock. So thank you again, and thank you to my team for pulling this off this week and pulling everything together, especially Christina. Wishing everyone well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Take care.
Bye.